Welcome to the People Playbook podcast. Very excited today. In today's episode, we have Joe Salemi coming to us, who's the Executive Director of Landscape Ontario, and otherwise known as LO. He's a certified association executive, over 20 years experience, right? So Joe brings a unique perspective on people, association management, helping landscape owners grow, develop, helping others grow and develop, and just trying to get people to a better place. From his transition back from not-for-profit to his passion for helping companies build efficiencies to increase profit, the conversation promises to be a valuable one. So let's jump right in. Joe, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Jason. Appreciate that.
Yeah, no, we're excited to have you because, as you know, we've had many discussions on people, and you and I, well, your message resonates with me a lot of times, just on, collaborative leadership, but still making the call sometimes when we have to make the call. We always want to be collaborative, but sometimes we can't, right? And we have to make the call. But what I really appreciate about your style is you do seek input and you do seek feedback, right? So let's dive back a bit and just talk about kind of how it all came to here. So you've had a remarkable career, right? So you've been in this business, spanning, landscape management, software with Dynascape, combination of both. How can you say it's shaped your leadership style?
I'd have to say, I had several mentors throughout my career, and I'd say every single one of them to me has helped shaped who I am today. Each one of them has brought something different. And, I can think back to how I got my start with the Canadian Nursery Landscape Association. I owe all of that to Victor Santa Cruz. Over my last 20 years, my predecessor here at Landscape Ontario has been Tony DiGiovanni, right? And he helped shape my core values, right? My foundational principles. He helped shape those into what they are today. But the person that introduced me to a people first leadership philosophy, and it so resonated with me as like, this is how I feel and act when I'm leading my team anyway, but he's really the first person that I heard articulate it, and that was Brad Furtney. And he introduced me to that. And then I realized more and more that a people first leadership philosophy doesn't come without keeping people accountable, right? And I think my hardest time that I experienced, especially early on in my leadership career, my leadership path, was having those really difficult conversations. But learning how to navigate those, I found to be just so helpful in embracing those difficult conversations. Because when you embrace that leadership philosophy of people first, you want to be soft on people, but hard on the issue or hard on the process or hard on the principle.
Yeah.
And, that to me, it's all of those mentors that I surrounded myself with that really shaped who I am today and where I base all of that foundational principles on.
Yeah, it's amazing. You talked about direct conversations or difficult conversations. It's funny how when we're young leaders, those are so hard to have. And I'm speaking personally as well. When you have a difficult, hard conversation, but the funny thing is the people that you need to speak to actually want those conversations, right? Because people like clarity, they like to be led, but sometimes the message has to, be a little difficult to deliver, right?
Yeah, no, you're right. And I've been, a sponge on what Simon Sinek has put out there in his career and just trying to soak up everything that he puts out there. I'm not sure I agree with everything, but there's elements of gold in a lot of what he says. And he has a whole talk on having difficult conversations. And I lead by that now. So when I have to have a difficult conversation, Jay, you and I are going to sit down and we need to have one of these difficult conversations. And I'm going to start when you sit down and say, hey, Jay, I have something that's really hard to tell you. And it's hard for me to tell you, but it's going to be hard for you to hear.
Yeah.
So let's have that conversation. Just know that this is hard for both of us. So that instantly brings our temperature down a little bit. My heart rate will go down. Your heart rate's going to go down a little bit. And then we can have this honest conversation.
Yeah, I love that. That's very transparent, and it prepares the person to, hey, you might not like exactly what you hear right now, but you need to listen to me because you need to hear this so we can move forward in our relationship, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
So important.
You were let's talk about Dynascape for a second. So very successful career there. You were there. You had some momentum.
Yeah.
Everything was going well. So what happened and how did the transition make from Dynascape to Landscape Ontario? Because I'm sure it might have been difficult to say, hey, things are kind of check, they're going well here right now, and now I'm gonna jump into this totally different world. What? Tell me about that story and how that happened.
Yeah, honestly, it was a big decision for me to leave Dynascape. I had been recruited out of the CNLA, the Canadian Nursery Landscape Association, to go and run Dynascape when I first left there. And I spent 8 years kind of helping build that business. I mean, it was well established as a de facto standard in the landscape design market, but we helped lift their contractor software off the ground and get it into the marketplace. The owners at the time, they wanted to step back. They wanted Dynascape to be a lifestyle business, and they wanted someone to come in and be serious about running it and feel ownership over the company. So, I felt like that was the right opportunity for me. And then in 2018, right at the beginning of the year, we were approached by a private equity company to purchase the company. At first the owners weren't really interested, but the more we talked and more we saw what the offer is going to be, especially the multiplier
Yeah.
on the annual recurring revenue, the more that they saw that there was an opportunity for them. So I helped walk them through the acquisition process, and on Canada Day, 2018, that company was officially sold and handed over to that private equity company. I stayed on and helped the existing team transition from previous ownership to new ownership, and stuck around for 2 years. Honestly, with the investment of private equity, there was a lot more resources to do some of the work that we've always wanted to do. There was what comes with working with any PE company, were some more corporate reporting systems, all these kinds of things to formalize the business, which was all great. But then one of my mentors comes along, comes into the fray, and Tony DeGiovanni from Landscape Ontario. In my career, he had offered me a job 3 times, officially 3 times, but it always
You weren't going to be able to say no to him again, right?
right. So, and it always been around sales. And honestly, it wasn't something that I wanted to do. But joking slash not joking, I said to him, Tony, when you're ready to retire, you let me know. And he and I were having breakfast at the Landscape Ontario AGM, January 2020. And it was just he and I at the table. He's like, hey, remember when you told me that if I was ready to retire to let you know? He's like, I'm ready to retire. In the next 2.5 years, I'll be retiring, and I want you to be my succession plan. Well, Jay, I probably what felt like 4 or 5 minutes with my jaw on the floor. It probably wasn't that long, wasn't even close to that long, but
Yeah.
felt like that. I looked at him and said, oh my God, like what an absolute honor to have this conversation with you. So we spent the next month talking about the opportunity. By February, we had a deal signed. And April 1st, 2020, I started with Landscape Ontario 2 weeks after the world shuts down.
And crazy, right? So you start first of all, very crazy day, April 1st to start a job, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So and then the world shuts down, right? But
Mhm.
isn't it funny when you put something out there and you just say kind of a off the cuff comment like that it comes back and says, hey, you know what? People are listening, right? And
Yeah,
yeah,
and for me, it's like, there's this notion of like a big kid dream.
yeah,
As kids, we all have these dreams of, I want to be a firefighter when I grow up, or I want to be Superman when I grow up.
yeah,
Well, when I had left the CNLA, it was always in the back of my mind that if Tony ever decided that he was going to retire, that I would want to be in contention for that role.
yeah.
And Tony was a mainstay in the industry here in Ontario. He held his role for 33 years. I mean, nobody ever thought that he would ever leave. And when he decided to, he tapped me on the shoulder. That absolutely blew me away. So I'm living my big kid dream right now, and it's hard to get better than that. I am having a killer time.
Yeah, I love that, Joe, because Tony was, I guess, people describe him as a legend in the business, right? And those are big shoes to fill. And just, from talking to people, you've done a really good job at filling those shoes, right? That's a big ask to say, hey, here's somebody, who's 33 years in the business, is well respected, and I'm taking over that person's role. That must have been almost daunting.
Totally. Well, the first thing is, I mean, there's nobody on the planet that can wear Tony DiGiovanni's shoes, for one. I mean, so I had to wear my own. I had to, like, he blazed such a trail, but, I had to walk my own path, and that wasn't easy. And I mean, the other side of it is when you've got a legend in the industry that's been around for so long that carries such a big presence, I mean, casts a really long shadow. So to step out of that, and I think what's helped the most is that his values and my values were aligned quite a bit.
Yeah.
Our styles are very different, but our values aligned. And I think that was really important from an internal perspective for leadership because staff over time, because there was a 2.5 year transition, right? So they got to know me really well in that 2.5 years, but they didn't have to change their understanding of what leadership values were,
Yeah.
right? Because our values were aligned already.
They were
We had a
consistent.
different way of articulating those values and putting them into play, but the foundational principles were very similar.
Yeah. And when we have consistency like that, we're able to
Mhm.
just, still be able to run a great organization, and we don't make people feel like, hey, where's this going all of a sudden?
Totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So now you're in the association world, and you get to deal with many landscape owners and professionals and whatnot. And in the landscape world, there's something different happening every day, right?
Sure
So,
is.
right. So, in your opinion, what do you think is the most common hurdle for these businesses today?
Well, here's the thing. Every single business, landscape business owner has got something in common. And, whether they're a sole proprietor or not, they've all got staff, right?
Yeah.
They've all got people that they have to lead. And, this may be an unpopular opinion amongst the industry, but I strongly believe we have a leadership gap in the landscape industry. You've got people that are incredible at doing the work and, completing beautiful, environmentally sustainable green spaces and backyard oasis, luxury estate landscaping. But I do think that we've got a bit of a leadership gap, and I think that's the common thread. That the better leaders that are produced as business owners, the more successful the companies are going to be. I'd say probably that's probably the biggest theme that I've seen in my time here.
Is that because, Joe, all of a sudden they're not the technician anymore? They're the owner, and they're having troubles making that jump?
Yeah, I mean every landscape business owner, the majority of them, they've started out. I mean this my favorite story that I get to hear often. I started mowing lawns when I was 13 or 14 years old, and it's grown into a multi-million-dollar business,
Yeah.
right? But it started because they were great at mowing lawns and talking to people, right? Not because they were fantastic at running a business. They've had to figure that out on the side, right? So figuring out how to run a business is way different than being excellent at running a business or leading people. So yeah, I'd say that that's probably the biggest thing. Having started out usually working for someone else makes them a great technician, but not necessarily the best business leader or people leader.
Yeah, I often talk to business owners and I say, you have to, when you become an owner, you have to ensure that you haven't bought yourself a job,
Yeah.
right? Right.
Yeah.
So you need to be an owner. You need to run a business, and you didn't buy this business so you have a job. You bought this business to create freedom, wealth, stability, whatever that is, right? And just make sure it's hard sometimes when we're in a technical aspect of the role to understand we might be the bottleneck that's helping us not scale as opposed to scaling, right?
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think it's these kinds of business owners that get in their own way.
Yeah.
If the business has to shut the doors because you can't be there one day, then you don't have a business,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Joe, Landscape Ontario, it's been very, well, it has a reputation of being very community driven, right? So that's a big responsibility for you to take over. So how do you foster that sense of community within the industry and make sure that we keep that momentum going?
Totally. I think and you're right. The notion of community is well established within Landscape Ontario, and we foster this by making sure everybody feels like they're welcome at the table. First of all, if you don't feel welcome, then you're not going to feel like you're part of the community. So we want to make sure that you feel welcome at the table. Second, everyone's there for the right reason. You know, it's not about competition, it's about sharing. So we have this philosophy of sharing within the industry. You know, I heard it best described when there was a committee meeting quite some time ago, back when I was with the Canadian Nursery Landscape Association. There was 11 people around the table, and one person was offering idea after idea after idea, and there was competitors around the table. And one guy said, "Well, I don't really know if I want to share with everybody because like you're all my competitors." And the one gentleman that kept sharing said, "Well, I know if I share an idea and you share an idea and you share an idea, then I'm giving up one idea, but I'm getting 10 ideas in return." This philosophy is echoed through everything that we do now, all of our committees, all of our sector groups, all of our chapter boards. We have over 300 volunteers within Landscape Ontario, and this is the foundational principle that we have is of sharing. So that permeates through the rest of our membership. So when we're communicating, we're saying, "Hey, come to our event." We're not inviting you to come to just an industry event. We're inviting you to come and join the community so that we can continue our discussion.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing? It goes back to that saying, you give what you get and you get what you give.
Totally.
Right. And I've had the privilege of attending some of your peer sessions, and
Mhm.
it is different than I would say even most landscape associations groups around the world. I believe that Landscape Ontario is the leader in actually saying, "Hey, safe room. Let's
Mhm.
try to do something that's great for the industry, the sector, and yeah, leave a little more on the table than you take." And it's amazing what actually happens, right?
Totally. And, you know, within our peer-to-peer network, when we do those sessions where it's business owners in the room, we have a pledge. And I always make sure that I remind everyone in the room what the pledge is at the beginning of those events. And the whole notion behind the pledge is to make sure that everybody understands that the ego is left at the door, first of all. Second, we're all here to help each other. So, whatever challenges you're going through, know that you can be vulnerable because you're not going to be judged for the issue or challenge you're going through. Everyone here is here to help. So, if you share what your challenge or your struggle is at the time, you're going to have 40, 50 other business owners that have surrounded you to say, "We're here to help, and here's the scaffolding that we can help put in around you to help you get through that issue, that challenge that you're going through right now." You don't have to go through it alone.
Isn't it? What a nice thing when you can be vulnerable, right? It is. As people, we always have our guard up, and it's, the old guard used to think that's a weakness. I don't want to show that I'm vulnerable because they might think I'm weaker than I am, right? But I actually think it's one of the biggest strengths that you can actually show to say, "Hey, I don't know this. And I don't know what I'm doing right now, and I'm looking for help." Because I believe when you say, "I'm looking for help," all of a sudden, people want to help, and you in turn become a better leader, become a better owner, become a mentor, whatever you're working on at the time with your company.
Yeah, Jason, I couldn't agree with that more. You know, the more you put those things out there, the more you allow yourself to be vulnerable. And I mean, don't get me wrong, you have to be in a place that, first of all, you trust the people that you're being vulnerable with and understand that you're not going to be judged or ridiculed for sharing. But as long as you have that level set, that's the gameplay that we have right now. The more that you can do that and be vulnerable and share, I almost feel like it's a bit of a therapy session too, you know, just being able to verbalize the things that you're going through. Instantly, you feel like the weight come off your shoulder when you can be vulnerable. But then when you have your peers that, you technically compete with on a day-to-day basis, but are saying, "No, man, look, we've been through that. Look at this, go talk to this person, go over here and do this." And like, if you go through these steps, you'll see yourself out of this hole that you've dug. To me, there's nothing more valuable in life than in running a business to be able to have access to a peer group like that.
Yeah, for sure. So speaking about peer groups and kind of transitioning a bit, so how do you
Mhm.
balance the dual demands of your role in running a trade association, right? So you're running Landscape Ontario and then supporting the growth of individual landscape companies and businesses and helping them grow along the way.
Well, I can't do it by myself.
Yeah.
So because that's a monumental job right there, right? So
Yeah.
I've surrounded myself with just the most incredible leadership team you could ever imagine. The investment that we've made in our directors here at Landscape Ontario help convey that message of community across the board and develop and provide the resources for landscape business owners to be able to be successful in what they do every day. Honestly, it's the team that I have around me. that we're able to do what we do.
Yeah, you and and I know some of your team, and they that resonates, by the way. So they feel that, right? So I'm a big believer, communication and trust run a business, right? If I don't communicate with you, it's probably because I don't trust you. If I
Yeah.
don't trust you, I probably won't communicate with you. So how do we fix those two pillars of our business to
Yeah.
make sure that we can all move forward together, right?
No, you totally got it. Things move way quicker when you have trust. And to me, when we work together as a leadership team and we're all rowing in the same direction, we do that externally, but we don't always row in the same direction internally when we're meeting together. And we can have divergent thought, and we can have disagreements, and we can basically duke it out in the war room. But once we're done, we've settled it and we're on message, and we continue to be supportive and aligned when it comes to working with our members. I mean, we have to be an organization like this. It's like steering a cruise ship. It's not something you can just turn on a dime or stop immediately. And so it has to be everything that we do has to be super intentional.
Yeah, you're you're speaking very much like a locker room. Like, let's go into the locker room. Let's challenge each other respectfully,
Yeah.
right? Get everybody's opinion on the table. Probably have some arguments. That's okay,
Hmm.
right? As long as they're respectful and we're not being mean to each other. But let's ensure that when we come out to play the game, we're aligned and we're all singing the same tune and we're all on the same page going forward.
Totally. So important. And I think it's good to have those disagreements respectfully, of course, and, even some arguments. They can happen in that locker room, and that's totally okay.
Yeah.
But let's sort it out all there so it doesn't have to happen on the field.
Yeah,
You know.
absolutely. And you come across as a stronger team when you do that. Joe, you've been in, so what year? So how many years has it been now that you've been in the director role?
So as executive director, September it'll be 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about 3 years. A lot can happen. So
Yeah.
far in the 3 years, what's been your most memorable moment?
Wow. Okay. I
I
mean,
know there's probably many, but if you
there's
have to
been
say,
a
okay, I'm going to put my Joe filter
ton.
on it now, what's been the
Yeah.
most memorable moment?
Jay, that's a tough question, man. Yeah, there's been a lot that's been really awesome, but probably my favorite thing so far, and this is totally an internal thing, and all like everything in my head is screaming, talk about a thing that happened with members and something we did for industry. And we've done a ton of great things for industry. And there's a couple of things that we're doing now that we'll be able to announce soon. But probably my favorite thing that's happened in the last almost 3 years, 6 weeks ago, we were able to convince the leadership team to do a 2.5 day offsite retreat. And we have never been so close and so tight. The connections that were made in that 2.5 days were something that we couldn't ever replicate in a conference room, not ever. In 2 years of regular leadership team meetings, we could have never accomplished that. And so that time to me was so incredibly special. I'll never forget that. That was a career highlight for me. And that's going to become an annual thing for us.
I love that. And you just, sometimes it's get good just to get away, not the same scenery. Let's go somewhere else. Let's learn. Let's know each
Yeah.
other. Let's share great ideas and get there together. And when we're in the boardroom and we have our cell phones close by and we can see our computer screen across the room, and you're not really there, but when you just kind of say, let's seclude ourselves and get somewhere, it's
Yeah.
amazing the stuff that happens,
Yeah,
right?
for sure. We went to a nice place. We made sure that we had budgeted for it and using our members' money responsibly, of course. But we want to also do this as a thank you to our leadership team for all the time that they take away from their families and from home and dedicate to the betterment of the industry and the association. And when everyone was checking into their rooms, they were so excited. I mean, we have a small leadership team, but just to hear the excitement and the passion that was starting to grow just at check-in. And then everyone gathering in the suite, we made sure that, there was lots of drinks and snacks. And, the foundation of the 2.5 days was supposed to be equal parts deep dive discussion and team connection, spending time outside and connecting and having activity. But when it came time to break and do that outdoor stuff, everyone was so committed to the conversation, nobody wanted to leave. So, yeah, so it was a really special time for me. And Jay, if it's okay, I'm going to share with you something that was really personal that happened there. At dinner on the first night, the team showed up with this green box, and in it was a green tie. And I'm a little bit emotional even talking about it now, but they presented that tie to me with gratitude and said, without your leadership, we would have never even considered doing this. You brought us all together, and it's because of you that we're all here together. And we want you to have this tie as a symbol of our gratitude for you. It was an incredibly special moment to me. And
That's such a good story.
and so to me, it's not my green tie moment. It was our green tie moment. So anytime I wear that tie now, it's going to symbolize my pride for them, and just how grateful I am for that, for our leadership team. Just yeah.
Joe, and I love how you could tell it's resonated with you
Mhm.
because you speak about it so passionately. It is, I often say to people, we always remember the bad leaders
Mhm.
more so than the great leaders. And when we're in contact with a great leader, it's important to tell that person that they are doing a great job leader in a leadership perspective because we always hear what we do wrong. But isn't it great to phone somebody up that made a difference in your world and say, hey, you know what, you made a difference in my world? And whether that's
Totally.
a text, an email, a phone call, whatever it is, they need to hear that because I believe great leadership is contagious. And if we can pick
Mhm.
little bits and pieces up from everybody along the way, it hopefully will be a better world, right? Because
Totally.
we spend a lot of time with our teams, right? Like
Yeah, we sure
like
do.
people spend more time with their work family than they do their personal family
Yeah.
sometimes,
Yeah, no
right?
doubt.
So let's make sure that we're leading properly and know that people want clarity, they want leadership, they want to be led, and they deserve to work in a highly cultured environment, right?
Absolutely. And Jay, I'll take it even a step further with your leadership teams. For all those business owners out there who have leadership teams, those leadership teams, they want to be empowered to lead themselves. So, as much as they want to be led by their owner, an executive director, or their CEO, they want to lead too. And they want to be empowered to lead and to make their own mistakes. And so, I always take the philosophy of just like we talked about the peer group being that scaffolding, but I like to think of myself as a scaffolding around my leadership team too. So, empower them to lead, and I'll be there to support them where they need it. But they want to lead too.
Yeah, for sure. And that goes to speak with leadership without titles, right? You do not need to have a title to be a leader in your area or your world,
For
right?
sure.
Yeah.
Yep, no doubt.
You are a culture creator. What are some of the strategies you use to just create what you've created so that, to have people present you with a green tie and to
Mhm.
have people follow you? What are some of the strategies you've used along the way to become that culture creator along the way?
Well, I think, if I were to look at the empathy scale, I'm probably at the far end of the spectrum on empathy, and maybe some might even consider that to a fault. But I always try and put myself in someone else's shoes to understand how they might be feeling about something. And whenever we're coming up with a policy or a process or some kind of SOP, I try and imagine myself as someone in the role that has to do what we're setting out to do and how they might feel doing that. And to me, putting myself in their shoes gives me a way different perspective. So I want to create an organization and a culture that I love being at every day. We have this incredible facility here in Milton, and we have a hybrid work policy. We ask everyone to come into the office 2 days a week. I'm certainly here way more than that because I love being here and I love the energy that this place has. And we have a lot of people on our team now that are here way more than just 2 days a week because they love that energy too. And we know that CEOs and business owners and executive directors, they drive and they set the tone for the culture, but really that culture is what happens when we're not around. This place is incredible even when I'm not here, and that says a lot. And I'm so proud of what goes on here.
Such a
Yeah.
great answer, Joe. I heard from one person, honesty and transparency is when you do the right thing when nobody else is watching.
Totally. And I'll even take it further is a quote from John Wick. It's how you do anything is how you do everything. And I just absolutely love that quote. So, Yeah.
Joe, you've been generous with your time. I have one more question for you before I let you go of the day. If you look at kind of all the realms of your world and whatnot, and
Mhm.
Landscape Ontario and the goals that you have for the association in years to come, how do you envision the association impacting the broader landscape industry in the coming years?
Yeah, so to us, we see a change in the demographic and the makeup of the industry and the business owners. There's an aging demographic when it comes to ownership in the landscape industry, and it's our job as the industry trade association to facilitate and foster the growth of the next generation of business owners. So we're making a major investment in training and upskilling to be able to get people, first of all, into the landscape trades, but second, fostering leadership growth and development to be able to get to business leadership and business ownership in the industry.
That's great. That's fantastic. And I believe when people can see the path and you create the path for them, sure, the path has different little forks in the road and
Of
whatnot
course.
along the way, but there has to be a path. And it sounds like you and the association and your team have said, hey, you know what is that path? And let's get people on it.
Yeah, it's pretty darn exciting to live that out now.
I love that. Joe, with that, again, incredibly generous with your time. Thank you for being a good leader. I'll thank you personally because I'm fortunate in my world to come across a lot of them, and you're one of them. You do make a difference. And to my point earlier, I think it's important when people are making a difference to let them know they're
Mhm.
making a difference. So that becomes contagious and they still want to do it,
Yeah,
right? So
for sure.
thank you for being a great leader to your people and the industry. And I thank you for your time today.
Appreciate that, sir. Thanks for having me. Really do appreciate that.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.